Hello everyone and welcome to the next installment of the development previews for the 5th version of Divide and Conquer. This is not going to be a standard episode as I do on my channel, but rather similar to what I did about 6 or 7 months ago in September, where I looked at all the recent changes that had been going on to provide you guys the whole overview of what to look forward to in the next version. And the biggest thing in this time frame has been changes to Dunland, but there's also been quite a few odds and ends scattered throughout the campaign map. So before I get into the real meat and potatoes, being Dunland's changes, I wanted to go over some things on the campaign map. And first of all, scattered throughout the plains of Gorgoroth are Mordor watchtowers. So now if you play as Mordor, you will have vision over pretty much everything within the Morannon, Minas Morgul, Moragast, all the way to Kar-Gukor over here. Just so that you don't have to put watchtowers on. It kind of represents the fact that Sauron would have orcs and encampments and his eye watching pretty much everything within these plains. Out into the east, into Nirn and towards Khand, you don't have watchtowers out here. So you do still have some blind spots, so you can put some towers up there if you would like. A new settlement has been placed down. Dars Gurum actually replaces Cirith Ungol, which is still on the map over here as a fort now, and its model on the map is now merged with Minas Morgul. You'll see that if you hover over it. So it's no longer a settlement and has been moved to cover some land in the east because a lot of this was just empty territory, so it makes sense to add a new settlement over here. For other settlement changes, if we go up into Dale, Talathing, which was somewhere in this region, has been moved also. It is no longer in northeastern Rovanion / Rune. It is now the Fangorn camp here next to Isengard, and there are of course Ents here, and Isengard will take this camp in the turn 1 auto expansion as long as you are not playing Isengard or playing as Dunland. But for anyone else, they will have the Fangorn camp. Kind of represents the fact that Saruman is doing some logging. Before I forget the watchtowers aspect, there are now also watchtowers over Erebor. So Erebor and the Iron Hills at Kirit Cathal, you no longer have to spend time sending, say, Thorin, Glowin, or Gimli around to put down watchtowers. You now have full vision over your starting domain, which is more of a quality of life improvement, and it's just nice to have to be able to see your entire realm. And it's kind of a whole modern Total War thing now. A lot of the modern Total Wars, you have mostly vision over your realm, but I know a lot of people still like to do watchtowers. I personally do, so just when it's quality of life in your capital region, it makes sense that the dwarves would have vision over here. Another change has been done looking at Henethanoon for the forts. It is no longer a settlement, but it is a fort with its model merged into Caer Andros, and if you do keep Caer Andros out of view, you will just see it is a standard fort here, but once you have it in view, you will see the Henethanoon model, and that's just a limitation of the game engine since it has to render Caer Andros to render the visuals there. It still has the same battle map, and Cirith Ungol also has its battle map retained. It's just that now they occupy fort slots instead of unique settlement slots because the unique settlements have gone into other places. Other changes, Brown Boat is now renamed to Tusture, and it has been incorporated into the Rovanian region, so if you play as Dale, you will get their Rovanian region-specific units over here, as well as the Rovanian Mercs. So now Rovanian is more of everything to the east of Mirkwood here. I believe Bur-Alg is also technically part of it. I could be mistaken there. I know for a fact Rawburg and everything down here, they also count. Some other miscellaneous changes. Honey has now been expanded on the map, so there are apiaries scattered around, such as Rovanian here at Rawburg. I think there's one in Bur-Southis, and I think somewhere in Logarth also, as well as in Rohan. There's been a few honey resources added, just because for Rohan, I mean, they have mead, therefore they have honey. So if you play as the Vale of Anduin, you now have a few more regions where you can build apiaries. Also including Rakiburg and Framsburg, who did not have apiaries previously. Now they do. So everything in the Anduin Vale, you will have the opportunity to use the Anduin's unique resource. And the reason for this is, for Enedwythe, they need fish, and fish resources are found all over the map. For Dunland, they need furs, and furs are also over the map. So to give the Anduin their unique resource building a bit more prevalence, it's been expanded, and there's also one put in Imladris should you either conquer it from the elves, or maybe if the goblins take it and you take Imladris, you'll be able to put an apiary over here as well. Gundabad can now train Castellans at Dol Guldur when it captures them, or captures the settlement. That was, it said in like a text pop-up that they could, but in-game they actually could not, so that has now also been fixed. Also in Imladris, Gilgalad's company has been buffed now, so it has 240 meter range up from 220, so now it is the longest ranged archer in the game, which makes sense because the High Elves, Gilgalad's company, would technically be the longest living warriors and therefore should be the best bowmen as well. So now they outrange even the Dunedain bodyguard, who previously had more range than them. There might be like a Wood Elf or a Lorien unit that I might have more range, but I'm pretty sure now Gilgalad's company has the greatest range in the game. Also, Mordor now has a Temple Ward and Temple Archer unit availability extension, meaning that in major Númenórean settlements, they can now train the Temple Wards and the Temple Archers. So that includes Minas Tirith, Dol Amroth, Umbar, Isengard, Tharbad, Deadman's Dyke, Anuminos, and Amon Sul over here. And the reason for that is, I mean, if you get this far away, you might as well have your temple units in these major Númenórean settlements. They are tied to the walls for Numinos, so they will need to be upgraded, but by the time you would naturally get an army up here, they should have theoretically rebuilt a Numinos by that point. In Tharbad, it's assigned to, I believe, the Bridge of Tharbad in both rebuilt and demolished form. And for Isengard, it's just with the Orthanc stone, or whatever the unique, not the Orthanc stone, but the unique Isengard building there, I think, for the tower itself. So now you can get your temple units with more availability. There's also been a Dol Amroth King's Purse increase, so now it is at 1,000 gold instead of 200, so for anyone who likes to play Dol Amroth and was having a hard time with the economy, that should help greatly, giving you, well, 800 more gold a turn to do whatever you'd like with. It didn't make sense that their King's Purse was insanely low, and I think a lot of players, there's consensus, there's mixed consensus. Some people think Dol Amroth is hard, some people say it's easy, but this should help alleviate the ones that are struggling with the faction. Also, in Gondor, if you play as the Reunited Kingdom, you can now actually train Gondorian archers. Before, you could only get Gondor infantry, spearmen, and some other Gondor units, but now the archers have been added to that pool, so you can conscript a regular archer unit here. Just something that just makes sense. And also for Gondor, the Fountain Guard now come from the Tower of Ecthelion in Minas Tirith. You no longer need to upgrade the barracks to get them. I believe you still can, and they'll get faster replenishment if the barracks is upgraded. But now your starting unit of Fountain Guard will have free upkeep in Minas Tirith, so they can be at their lawful station without just costing you like 500 gold a turn. I believe their upkeep's like 475, like that. So now you can train them again at turn 1 and have more Fountain Guard. Also, Grima has been moved to be stationed near Edoras, kind of representing his post as an agent of Saruman. So if you play as Isengard, he will be already here, leeching on King Theoden. Other general buffs include the Black Uruk archers for Mordor have had their upkeep increased from 189 to 260. They had very low upkeep for what their tier was, so that has been changed also. And I said it in my Arnor playthrough, but the Reunited Kingdom and Arnor can build the House of Kings in Numinos, and that building has been buffed to give you a faction-wide +2 law bonus and a additional free upkeep slot. So if you build that, it will help you with corruption. If you are playing the Reunited Kingdom, you should have less of an income penalty with all the land down here, and getting the extra free upkeep slot will also help out with the economy. Not that it's really needed, but it's just something nice because the building is really expensive and quite iconic. And also there have been various battle map fixes courtesy of the Elite Dwarf. Some battle maps you couldn't use certain siege equipment on, like the towers weren't set up right, or like the walls weren't set up right. So that has now been fixed and streamlined. So more battle maps, you can now use proper equipment. You all may have experienced some cases where there were certain walls that the ladders and the siege towers couldn't dock. So overall, you'll see more things that make sense with siege equipment. And then there have been many other typographical errors, typos, and other quality of life fixes. For a more detailed look, you can look at the changelog, which will be in the description below, and you can look at everything that's been done since Divide and Conquer version 5 has been in progress. And now we will finally get to Dunland. So Dunland has had a complete overhaul from the previous state they were in. Looking at the campaign map, first of all, there is now a direct connection and river crossing between Byrreg, which is now the new capital, which starts off at a city now with stone walls. So Byrreg and Dunyard now are connected to each other, which allows you to send troops between these two settlements quicker and establishes trade. But now we will go into the real meat, which is the script for Dunland, and at the end of the video will be the new units, and we'll go over them at that point. The High Brennan's Roost is your unique capital building, kind of just gives you public order and law and culture. It will, over time with the script, give you additional units and recruitment. So when you start off, you will have 3 generals. You will have King Yogthak, no longer a chief of Dunland, but now a proper king, and he comes with Orthanc Guard, gifted crossbows from Saruman, as well as heavy Isengard plate armor, shield, and a spear. It's an amazing bodyguard, pretty much what the Guardians of Dunland were before, but now give them a crossbow and stakes. So they are very, very useful. Do not let Yogthak die. It would be hard to let him die given the state of his bodyguard, but just, you know, don't let him get shot by, like, friendly fire on a catapult, you know, that sort of thing. Be careful with him. He is very tanky, but, of course, you know, anything can happen. The roll of the dice of an armor-piercing Axeman unit could potentially fell him, but you shouldn't have to worry about much with him. Menthar, over in Dunlarak, also has a Dunhird Slayer as his bodyguard, so the upgraded version of the Beast Slayers. 8 melee attack, 8 missile attack, 19 defense. They inspire troops and they have spears for melee. Only average accuracy but very long range, and all of these units do have specifications here saying who they were made by. So Bill, Baraka, Lorenian, Koma, Castellan, Avangmar, Torian, Reaper, White in the Black Cloud, Melkon, Reaper, and Finn. A lot of these guys are from the Third Age Reforged team who have come on to help out with Divide and Conquer, and they have done amazing work on the Dunland units. I'm a big fan of them, and they're very high quality. And then looking at Freka, who also might be your most useful starting general because he has cavalry and he has Frekelingir Harriers. This is your second tier of cavalry unit, and they are phenomenal. Good against mounts, so they will help out against Rohan. They have a very high charge, and they'll be great at clearing out rebels, Rohan infantry, and even fighting some of the Rohan cavalry. So an amazing unit. Keep Freka around because he does have something special that happens later on at the end of the script. So basically the way the script works is when you first start the campaign, you will get this message, and you guys can read through this if you'd like. I won't read through it here, but feel free to pause and get all of the lore and information here as you'd like. But basically you are tasked with proving your might to Saruman, and you must get 8 regions by turn 60 to prove that, so that's plenty of time. You already start with 3, so all you need is 5. I mean, you can go to Tharbad, Bile, Herat, and then you've already got 6 out of the 8 you need, and that's just 3 on your borders, and from there you can kind of go anywhere. Once you get 5 regions, you will unlock one of the generals here, Taraglan, who comes with Wolfguard Axemen, which are pretty much what the Eisenbach Axemen are, just with, I think, higher defense and, of course, new visuals. And when you get to 7 regions, you will unlock Glirhuin, who comes with Wolfguard Pikemen, which are an amazing pike unit, absolutely essential for fighting Rohan and quite powerful. So you do get rewards as you take incremental steps. Once you do take 8 regions, you will be tasked with conquering the Hornburg, and you will be given Lurtz as a general with his Berserkers and a small contingent of Uruk-hai Raiders and Uruk-hai Archers. Currently, you can't retrain those units, so you can't train new Urukai units. It's just a little bit of fun and a couple of extra units that you get to play around with in the campaign. And once you do take Helm's Deep, you will unlock recruitment for the Wolfguard units, and they will be in both Helm's Deep, Edoras when you get that, Isengard should you take it, and at Byrreg at the High Brennan's Roost. And then you will be asked to take Edoras, and when you do that, you can build a new landmark building called Wolf's Hall, which will also allow you to train the Wolfguard units there, as well as your Uber Elite Cavalry unit, and it completes the script. And I forgot to mention, but also when you get 8 regions and alerts, you are rewarded with the ability to train Orthanc Wardens and Orthanc Guard from Byrreg and from Edoras itself when you do capture it. So from your capital regions, you can train these units. They're rare, but they are very powerful. And also, should you take Isengard itself and betray Saruman, you will be able to train Orthanc units from Isengard also. But do note, should you betray Isengard, you will be having to fight the full might of Isengard, and a massive Uruk tide will sweep in, conquering many of these regions that you see on the screen here. In fact, pretty much all of these will be conquered by massive stacks from Isengard, including Helm's Deep. So if you want to take Helm's Deep and defend it from the Uruk tide, you can totally do that, and I think that would be something really fun to do. And if you do take Isengard and betray Saruman, you are rewarded if you can survive and hang on to the settlement with the ability to get the Isengard plate as an advanced blacksmith upgrade, and that will let you give the Orthanc Guard unit look to your Wolfguard unit, so they'll adopt this very heavy Isengard plate armor, and you'll see that in the second portion of the video when we look at the campaign changes. The other final rewards for taking Edoras and building Wolf's Hall is that you will unlock the large city and the stronghold tier, so you can build the final tiers of cities, which gives you a bit of progression, I would say, since you are starting to assimilate with the architects and people of Rohan. So I would say Dunland currently is probably the funnest of the Wildmen factions, in my opinion. Like, I guess it could be biased because they're going to have a new roster, but there's a lot of very fun narrative now that when you play as them, Isengard will be passive at the start, and it is up to you to prove your might against Rohan, your bitter enemy of old. But it's also open to sandbox. You could play them really however you want. If you want to just betray Saruman, unleash the Uruk tides, and have to fight them, Rohan, forge an alliance with Enedwythe if you want. I mean, the world is really your oyster, and you will still have rewards depending on what you choose to do. And then finally, we will look at their barrack structure, because that is the last major change for Dunland. Your barracks is now split between the Ancestral Dune and the Ancillary Training Grounds. So should you go for the Ancillary Training Grounds line, you will unlock Cavalry, but you lock yourself out of the Ancestor units. And if you go for the Ancestral line, you lock yourself out of Cavalry, but only for that settlement. So you could say have Byrreg starts with the Ancillary Training Grounds. So you get your Frecklinger Hill Riders, and then the Harriers at Tier 2, and then the upgraded version at Tier 3. But for either barracks, you will get your Long Spears and Raiders, and then your Warband Blade units. So those are kind of your Tier 2 and Tier 3 infantry. The Tier 1 Clan Levy Grounds will give you your Clan Spearmen, Axemen, and Slingers, your basic militia here. At the Tier 2, you will get the Long Spears and the Raiders, and take these stats with a grain of salt, they are subject to change. And at, oh, of course, Discord has to go off while I'm doing this. At Tier 3, you will also unlock the Warband Blades, Warband Host, and Warband Sentries, and they have phenomenal armor, and we'll get closer up looks of those in the next part of the video. But yeah, so if you choose the Ancestral line, you do get the Duneherd Berserkers, Warriors, and Duneherd Slayers, and if you go for the Cavalry line, you do get the Hill Riders, Harriers, and Stalwarts. And lastly, depending on where you are with these cities, you will unlock either Enedwythe units or Rohan units. So if you build the Cavalry line in Rohan lands, you will get Rohirrim and Rohirrim Horse Archers that you can recruit with a Dunland colored skin. That way they don't just look like, you know, green Rohan colors. And if you're in certain Anadwyth regions, which includes Dunyard, for example, you will have the capability to train the Falon Border Guards, the Mordag Fishermen, and the Falon Warriors. So if you're going into Anadwyth, it's probably in your best interest to build the Ancestral Dune, and if you're going into Rohan, it probably makes the most sense to train the Cavalry line. But for the most part, that is pretty much it for Dunland, and now we will go over to the battle map and take a look at the units there. And welcome to the battle map side of things. I'm going to have to do this in two sections because there are actually more Dunland units than there are unit slots that you can have in one army. So what I've decided to do is I have split them up into three groups, being group 1 here is everything that you can just recruit like standard. Group 2 would be the Dunhird line, and then group 3 is the Freckelinger line, depending on which barracks branch you go at. So first of all, looking at the General's Bodyguard, we have the Brennan's Guard, pretty much unchanged stat-wise from what the Bodyguard used to be, though they do no longer have the maces. They are no longer armor-piercing. In my personal opinion, I think they could stand to be a little bit stronger, but they are still quite decent, and they do look phenomenal. It was made by Bill Baraka, and a lot of these Dunland units will have this kind of credits here, so you can see who all did it. So Bill Baraka, Lyrinian, Coma, Castellan of Angmar, Reaper, White in the Black Cloud, Melkon. So all those guys have done phenomenal work, and I am just, like, I was so excited to see this roster come to fruition, and I really like it. It's distinct, it's different. I know there might be some mixed opinions on it, but I think it is fantastic. So yeah, that's your Bodyguard. You'll, of course, get them with every general. Nothing too fancy about them. And then your clan units, you do have the clan hunters who fire slings, actually, and they're pretty fun, and they actually shoot really fast. They do really good damage, actually. It's surprising how much damage output these guys can do. They are shirtless, though, for whatever reason, outside of the odd chap here and there. And then you have the Clan Spearmen, looking at 3 attack. 7 charge is a bit high. I feel like that's not quite intended, so I would disregard that charge stat. That's a bit ridiculous. But yeah, them compared to the Axemen, they have 1 less attack than the Axemen, but the same defense and overall the same visuals. And I really like the banner work here. I think these banners look really amazing on these units. There's a lot of detail. And Axemen, nothing too special about these guys. They'll get massacred by cavalry if they get charged, but they can do okay damage. They're cheap and they're spammable. Next up in line, you do have the Dunland Raiders. Again, some have decided to go shirtless and forego their clothing, and others have decided that they would rather do some shopping before they go into battle. They also have these really cool, unique Germanic shields that are seen nowhere else in the mod, which I really like. And these guys have been, I would say, generally buffed from their previous rendition. Their attack stat is now 9, but their defense is 8. So they've had an attack buff, but a defense nerf from what the Raiders were previously. It makes them into this kind of more aggressive sword and board unit that you can wield, but they are much more fragile than they used to be. But they're quite nice. I like them. They're fast at 115% movement speed compared to other units, so they'll get around quickly. You can get them on archers or have them do a flank, and they'll do pretty decently in combat. And I like their hats they've got here with the feathers. You'll see a lot of like Crebain kind of analogies in these units' designs. And then we have the Dunlanding Long Spears, basically a pike unit, although kind of a different one at that, in that they actually come with shield wall instead of a pike wall. Their stats are a bit low at the moment, though. I think they were over nerfed from air testing at 1 attack, 3 defense, but there will probably be more testing in that. So take all the stats with a grain of salt right now. Things may change. They are, of course, great against cavalry, but compared to other pikemen, they do tend to lose out with their current stats. But they are unique in that they have the shield wall, and supposedly they are amazing at defending choke points in settlements. I have not personally done that yet, but they, you know, they're different, so I'll give them that, and they look pretty cool, I would say. So that's those guys. You'll get those at the 2nd tier barracks. And now we have the warband unit, so you guys might remember like the warband host. They had that old classic tower shield look and they were heavily armored. They've now been buffed into a like tier 3 infantry. 7 attack, 7 charge, 16 defense. They can make a shield wall. They are very durable and are very detailed. Great against cavalry, great at holding the line. I would definitely recruit those guys if you can. Next we have the warband blades, so one less attack than the raiders, but double the defense effectively. I'd say they were equivalent to, I believe, the Wolf's Swordsman from Divide and Conquer 4.6, so I think they're around that same power level. But they do look quite phenomenal, I would say. And then the Dunland crossbows are now the warband sentries. I can't quite recall their previous stats. We're looking at 5 melee, 6 missile attack, okay accuracy, good against armor. They have been gifted these crossbows by Saruman himself, and Dunland likes to wield these efficiently. And right behind them, I've included their armor upgraded variant, which kind of matches the aesthetic of the Wolfguard units, which we will look at in the second part of the unit overviews. And they all kind of get this heavier kind of lamellar. I'm not quite sure what you would say this type of armor is, but maybe you guys know, and you'll see those feather motifs all over. Same type of setup is with the warband host and with the warband blades, and I'm personally just a big fan of seeing armor upgrades and seeing development in your units. It's one of my favorite features of Medieval 2, and I wish they would keep that in other games. Now going on to the ancestral units, we have the Duneherd Berserkers, 6 attack, 6 defense, so very fragile against arrows. They only have a level 1 shield, only level 1 armor. You can upgrade their armor, but they will get massacred by archers. But they do cause fear, they do have armor piercing, so they can be quite potent up against the right enemies. I would take these if you ever fight the dwarves or fight Gondor. I would definitely want to have some of these guys hanging around. And then the Duneherd Warriors, they are hiding right now. I think they can hide anywhere, which is nice. They come with throwing axes and then a great axe, so I believe the throwing axes are armor piercing, and then they have an armor piercing melee attack with those great axes. Decent stats. They also inspire their troops nearby, which I don't think is shared by other units. It looks like it's shared by the Duneherd Slayers, but I don't think that's shared with the other standard units, so that gives them something to kind of stand out. It's supposed to be kind of like they represent like the old ways of Dunland, kind of like, you know, the ancestors motif, I guess you could say, classical ways of warfare. And then we have the Duneherd Slayers. They can also hide anywhere. They've hunted many a wolf and felled many a crow. Some of them actually have Crebain skulls on their heads. I'm not sure if that's heresy or not. Maybe they just found ones that had already perished. But they can also hide anywhere. They have spears for melee, so if they get charged, they will easily hold their own. They don't work as like pikemen, which I believe the old Duneherd Slayers or Dunland Slayers had, the Beast Slayers. I think they kind of had like a pike type animation, but they wield these like standard like one-handed spears. But yeah, they're pretty strong. They'll resist a cavalry charge, and they have very high missile attack. Now going on to the Freckling, we've seen the Hill Riders, and I already showed you guys their stats, but we'll give you just a brief overview. Don't expect much from these guys. They will fall in battle quickly, but it's always nice to have cavalry. Then you have the Harriers over here, and then finally the upgraded Stalwarts. And I believe these Stalwarts already have this kind of upgraded visual look that the not the Wolfguard, but the Warband units have. And I think the Harriers also get a visual upgrade. I can't quite recall. But now we'll transition over to the elites of Dunland, and we can see the true glory of their newfound kingdom. And now we are here with the Wolfguard units, the Orthanc Guard, and the Herald. So I'll go over these units and their visual upgrades. So I checked my notes again. So once you actually take 8 regions, you will unlock the ability to recruit the Orthanc units, and once you have Helm's Deep, you unlock the Wolfguard units. Alternatively, you can also just capture Orthanc and get the Orthanc units as an unlock condition. Also, looking at the Wolfguard Axemen, pretty much what the Eisenmach Axemen were, very heavily armored, 12 attack, good against armor, they frighten the infantry, and 18 defense. I think that's a little bit more defense than what the Eisenmach had. But they're quite the powerful unit. Indeed, just don't let them get charged, but they'll hold up okay against archers relatively well since they have such high armor, especially for a wildman unit. I think Dunland might have some of the, like, if not some of the best, then definitely the best armor. I think they outclass the Anduin now, since they have been gifted armor from Rohan's armories that they've taken over and from Isengard's lands. The Wolfguard pikes are pretty much the same here, 7 attack, 18 defense pikemen. Very powerful. I mean, pikemen with anything more than like 3 or 4 attack are going to be strong. 7 is pushing that to the next level. Amazing pikemen, great against Rohan, great against all cavalry, and like the Wolfguard units, they'll take arrows okay since they have such high armor. Now behind them, I've included their Isengard armor upgrades. So these are the Wolfguard axemen. I will compare them right here. You can see the differences. They come with Isengard plate, kind of looking like Orthanc guard here. And I think that actually changes their axes. No, I think their axes are the same. It's just the armor itself. And they have some capes in the back, it would seem. And then the same style is also adopted by the Wolfguard pikemen when they get their armor upgrade. So you can have a very uniformed late game heavy armed roster. I think the only ones I'd like to see get this armor too would be the bodyguards. So you could have a full army in this like really heavy plate mail. I think it looks just phenomenal. And then in the back here we have the Orthanc guard. We looked at these with Chieftain Yagthak, again good against armor, mounts, they can put down stakes, and they have crossbows, and they have some really cool shields on the back. I like these designs with the Dunland heraldry. And if you play as the Reunited Kingdom, so if you play as Arnor or the Dunedain, you can actually recruit these units if you take Isengard, and they'll actually have like the white tree and the 7 stars on their backs with blue colors. So it's pretty cool actually, just something fun you can do if you are playing as the Dunedain and you take Isengard. You get rewarded with some very powerful units. These guys are more defensive, and then you have the Orthanc Wardens, which trade the shields for much more offensive power, wielding the crude Isengard cleaver, some of them on these really long shafts, so they're kind of like pole arms. So some have the big two-handed cleaver, and some wield them kind of like a crude Naginata, I would say. 15 attack, 23 defense, good against infantry, just amazing units here, very durable, and they are quite powerful. They are expensive, but they are quite the front line, and I think Dunland now really stands its ground with its infantry-based like roster that it has, definitely sticking out from the other Wildman factions. And finally, once you take Edoras and build the Wolf's Hull, you unlock the Heralds of the Twofold King, and these are the best cavalry unit that Dunland can get. You can recruit them out of Edoras and from Byrreg through the Capitol building once you've built Wolf's Hall. They have 8 melee attack, which is good against armor, and a 9 missile attack that they throw, I think 2 or 3 axes each, and they are quite powerful. They do have a lower charge than other cavalry, but they make up for it in terms of melee skill. I mean, 8 AP melee attack, 22 defense. These guys are absolute monsters, and they have a bonus versus cap, and they fight infantry. So all around, just amazingly powerful units. And there is like a bit of a Easter egg with the with one of your generals. I won't say who it is, but once you fulfill certain conditions, you guys can guess what it is. That general's bodyguard will change to the Herald of the Twofold King, and you'll have a probably overpowered replenishing bodyguard of these guys. I'll just show their power against some of these Tirith Ire Wardens. You can see the power of their throwing axes. Yeah, absolutely amazing cavalry unit here. I think the only cavalry unit that throws axes in the game. I know there's some other like mounted skirmishers, but definitely just helps them stand out from the crowd. Of course, Tirith Ire Wardens here are very like high-end units, so they'll tank even armor-piercing missiles decently well, but these guys are absolute monsters. Probably not the best unit to test them on, since these are bracing halberds, but we'll just see what happens if they go head-on. Yeah, even head-on into these halberds, they take quite a few of them out, and that is just the sheer power of them. Now, they will fall because these are armor-piercing halberds, but that goes on to show just how potent this cavalry unit can be. Just imagine they or something like maybe Rohan's infantry, or maybe like Dwarven infantry, these guys are going to be absolute monsters. That's pretty much it for the recent changes. There's other minor things, textual changes, typo errors, and other miscellaneous details. For that, the changelog will be in the description below, so you guys can take a look at that and just see the whole rundown of everything. I just wanted to get through the major changes that had occurred, and this was a brutal charge too. I don't think they were properly bracing. Yeah, you can take a look at that below, and I hope you guys are excited for version 5. It's been a lot of fun, and I think you guys are all going to really enjoy it once it does eventually release. I can't say for certain when it will come, but I think we are definitely getting a lot closer to a proper release. Do these crossbows firing? I think they're going to fire up and over our guys. Not the best use of crossbows, but, you know, it's still armor piercing. If some of those bolts do hit these guys, it'll get the odd kill here and there. But yeah, I think that'll pretty much do it for the episode here. I hope you guys enjoyed the previews, and until next time, my friends, have a good one.